There is something curious, and rarely named, that happens when everything becomes quiet. It doesn't happen during chaos. It doesn't happen when life is falling apart. It doesn't happen when something is visibly wrong. Quite the opposite. It usually happens when nothing seems wrong at all, when the routine slows down, when demands fade, when the external world finally becomes still. There are no notifications, no incoming messages, no background voices asking for immediate answers. There is only you. And it is precisely in this moment that something unexpected can emerge. Instead of the peace silence promises, a subtle discomfort appears. Not clear sadness, not intense anxiety, not obvious fear, but something quieter than all of them. A light yet persistent emptiness, a gentle pressure in the chest, a restlessness that doesn't shout but doesn't leave. Many people don't know how to name this feeling. They simply experience it. And, almost always, they interpret it the same way. Something is wrong with me. After all, we were taught that silence should be relaxing, that being alone should be restorative, that the absence of stimulation should bring relief. So, when silence begins to feel uncomfortable, the conclusion seems obvious. There must be an internal flaw. But what if that conclusion is wrong? What if discomfort is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of contact? For most of our lives, we learn to stay occupied, not only out of necessity, but out of habit. Work, conversations, content, constant noise. All of this creates a protective layer between us and what we feel more deeply. As long as there is movement, there is distraction. As long as there is noise, there is internal distance. But silence removes that layer. It doesn't create anything new. It simply reveals what was already there. That's why silence is not automatically peace. It is a mirror. And mirrors do not choose what they reflect. They only show. If there is inner integration, silence soothes. But if there are ignored parts, unresolved emotions, or aspects of the self that were postponed for later, silence begins to press inward. Not violently, but persistently, as if something inside you were saying, without words, "Now that there is no more distraction, can you hear me?" This is the point where many people become uncomfortable. Not because silence is dangerous, but because it brings things too close. It brings you closer to thoughts that were avoided, closer to feelings that never had space, closer to parts of your own identity that were left dormant. And then the wrong question appears. Why do I feel this way? As if feeling were the problem. Perhaps the right question is different. Perhaps silence is not exposing a flaw, but pointing toward something that has gone too long without being acknowledged. And when silence begins to hurt, it may not be a sign that you are broken. It may be a sign that you are beginning to notice. If silence reveals something within us, the next question becomes unavoidable. Why do so many people do everything they can to avoid it? The answer is not simply fear of being alone, it is fear of contact. From an early age, we learn how to adapt to the external world. We learn which emotions are acceptable, which reactions are tolerated, which parts of ourselves must be controlled, softened, or hidden. Feelings that are too intense are suppressed. Thoughts that feel inconvenient are postponed. Certain questions about who we are never find the space to be asked. None of this happens consciously. It is a slow, almost invisible process. Over time, we construct functional versions of ourselves. People who perform, who respond, who produce, who adjust. And as long as we remain in motion, this version feels sufficient. Silence disrupts that movement. When external stimulation disappears, there is nowhere left to run. No tasks to fill the space. No distractions to maintain distance from what is happening inside. And in that absence, old thoughts return. Unresolved emotions resurface. Sensations that were never fully processed begin to emerge. For many people, this is deeply uncomfortable. Not because these experiences are dangerous, but because they are familiar in a way that was never resolved. Silence remembers. It remembers who you were before adaptation became necessary. It remembers emotions that were interrupted too early. It remembers questions that were never answered. This is why the impulse to fill the space appears so quickly. Music playing at all times. Videos running in the background. Endless conversations. Not for entertainment, but to keep something away from awareness. The mind learns this strategy efficiently. Whenever silence approaches, something activates. A reflex to check the phone, a need for noise, a restlessness that has no clear explanation. Slowly, silence becomes associated with threat, not because it harms, but because it exposes. Avoiding silence, then, is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of psychological survival. A strategy the mind developed to protect the individual from internal material that once felt overwhelming. But every form of protection has a cost. The more silence is avoided, the less space there is for integration. And the less integration exists, the more intense the emptiness feels when noise finally fades. Silence does not create discomfort. It simply removes the buffer. And when that buffer disappears, what has been avoided for years finally finds a way to be felt. If silence reveals what was hidden, and avoidance became a form of protection, then a final question naturally arises. What happens when we stop running? Staying with silence does not mean searching for immediate answers. It does not mean resolving everything. It does not mean reaching a permanent state of peace. It means allowing contact. Contact with thoughts that never had space to unfold. Contact with emotions that were interrupted too early. Contact with parts of the self that were left waiting in the background of one's life. This moment is often uncomfortable because it dismantles the illusion of control. It challenges the idea that constant activity is the same as well-being. In silence, there are no roles to perform, no identities to maintain, no distractions to negotiate with the mind. There is only direct experience. For many people, this feels unsettling, but silence does not demand heroic courage. It asks for something simpler and far more difficult: the willingness to observe without judgment. Silence does not ask for explanations. It does not ask for quick interpretations or solutions. It asks only for presence. And slowly, something begins to shift. What once felt like emptiness starts to take shape. Discomfort transforms into information. Sensations that were vague begin to organize themselves. Not because they are eliminated, but because they are finally acknowledged. This is the moment when silence stops being an enemy. It becomes a space of listening. Not listening to the external world, but listening to what has always existed beneath the surface, waiting for enough stillness to be noticed. This process is not quick, it is not linear, and it is not consistently comfortable, but it is honest. And perhaps that is why so many people resist it, because silence does not promise immediate relief. It offers something deeper, the possibility of becoming conscious of what once had to be avoided in order to keep functioning. When silence begins to hurt, it is not signaling collapse. It is signaling transition, a movement from living in reaction to living with awareness. Perhaps you were never broken. Perhaps you simply spent too much time away from yourself. And perhaps silence, the very space you learned to fear, is where the parts of you that were left behind are still waiting to be found.